Welcome to the Speaking Podcast. You can find all my episodes on speakingpodcast.com. I'm also on BitChute and YouTube as Speaking Podcast. I also have the Awakening Podcast to learn Polish, the meditation, and the crypto podcast, and all can be found on roycohn.com. Today, my guest, really looking forward to this because I got a lot of notes. Very interesting lady based in Colorado. Please welcome Stacy Pederson.
Peterson, but you can call me whatever I've been called.
So you call it Peterson with a D, yes?
Yes, I know. It's weird. It's different.
No, because I have a friend in Canada and he pronounces it Pederson. So it's Peterson. Okay.
Well, it depends. It depends on the person. I don't know why it's called Peterson.
Yeah, my own name is the same. It has a few pronunciations. It's it's all good. So, Stacy, you might let the listeners know. Who are you?
Okay. Well, my name is Stacy Pederson, and I am a funny motivational speaker who has almost died a bunch. That's usually my pitch. And I have a degree in theater, a background in clean comedy. And then because I almost died and went through a bunch of life journey, people started asking me to speak, but be funny. And that's what I do today.
Okay. Because when I heard that, I just assumed it was dying on stage, but it's obviously something more.
No, I died on stage a few times. I felt like I was dying on stage. There have been times where I have not killed it. So.
You might tell us that story. That's if you want to, of course.
Oh, sure. It's really long, but I will give you a very condensed version. But basically, I was building a musical theater set for kids and I stepped on a rusty nail and it healed fine. It wasn't tetanus, but I got bacteria in my bloodstream and settled in some bones in my back and they got infected and I've been in septic shock 5 different times. And had surgeries and antibiotics and all kinds of stuff. And they've never been able to figure out why it won't go away or kind of how it even started. So, and then through that journey, I was also going through a divorce. And, my first husband was sick at the time too, as well. And I lost my job. And so I just kind of lost everything within a very short amount of time. And so it took a while to kind of rebuild. And so that's what I share now is just some of what that journey looks like. And I feel like my story used to be super unique, but now with, just the COVID and the quarantining and all that, I realize a lot of people's lives have changed very drastically, very quickly. And it seems to hit home a little bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you've got I know that your journey is an actress, and then you mentioned, the nail was with the academy. So I wanted to discuss that as well, because what I've noticed is with speakers, the ones that have done acting tend to be way better because they can just, it's not just the words, it's everything. Yes. So how, what's it called? BFA in theater? I don't even know what BFA means.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a bachelor's of fine arts degree in theater with an acting directing emphasis. So I've done a lot of theater. And then I have this period in my life where I didn't act for 15 years, but I did teach it. And then I got into commercial and film and I love it. I still do it. Just speaking is my primary thing that I do.
So since you've mentioned the commercials, I've actually looked at them. Well, I don't know, are they all of the commercials you've done, but the ones you've 4 or 5 up, and they're actually very good. So what have you learned? Because some people, maybe they aspire to do that. What's the tips and tricks? Because you do look natural. Some people don't when they do the acting, but it looked good. So you might let me know what kind of tricks you've learned from doing the commercials.
Sure. Well, being natural is really hard. And it just takes, unfortunately, a lot of practice. The more you're on camera, the more you're in front of people, the more natural it becomes. And I actually have terrible, terrible, terrible stage fright. So to this day, I have horrible stage fright. And so you kind of work through that, just getting used to it and kind of trying to overcome it. I've never gotten rid of it. I've just kind of made friends with it. and and I just recognize it's part of the process.
You made friends. What did you your
Yeah,
stage fright called? Hey, you're
yeah,
coming on stage with me.
yep. Fear, insecurity, it's all right there. Fear of failure. So we're tight. But you know what? A lot of actors actually do suffer from stage fright. So it's very common. And so I like to say that just because you're afraid doesn't mean you shouldn't. There's there's two types of people in the world. There's those who are afraid, so they don't. And there are those who are afraid and they do it anyway. And that's very true, I think, of camera work or stage. It's just it's normal. You're human.
Exactly.
So,
And have you got a kind of procedure that you do to kind of overcome that fear?
yes. Yeah. So I'm actually a total introvert. So if the event or where I'm at allows, I really don't like talking to people that much. I like to hide out. And if I need to, I'll go hide out in the bathroom, the restrooms.
I've got the title for this one. The speaker that doesn't like speaking.
Yes, it's totally true. And then just recognizing, because right before I get these thoughts that I think are pretty common, where it's like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Why did I agree to this? I hate this. My heart's pounding, that kind of stuff. And I just have to reframe my thoughts of, no, Stacy, this is what you do. You panic before. It's okay. Just get up there. It's not about you. It's about the audience. And I'm still scared. But what I've learned is as soon as I start, about 30, 60 seconds in, it goes away. So I just have to get through that initial 30 seconds or 60 seconds. And with comedy, that's a little tricky because you're supposed to like hit your first minute, like your first 5 minutes are the most important. And you're supposed to just be amazing. And I never am that first 30, 60 seconds. I'm like dying and stuttering. And so, yeah. But as far as just tricks with the camera, and being natural, it really is learning to calm your body down so that your body doesn't, all that nervous energy or whatever is just kind of calm and still, and kind of letting that energy out through your face and your eyes rather than through your body and like we do naturally. And just, it's practice. It's an art, really. You just do it over and over and over again, and you just get better at it. It's just like sports. People think, oh, I wasn't awesome the first time I did a video, I'm never doing it again. But you've never played a certain sport and you ran out on the field the first time, you're not going to be very good. So it's skill.
No, exactly. I know that I recently listened to my first few podcasts, and I wanted to curl up in a ball.
Yes.
And I was so proud at the time, I didn't realize, but that's the journey of life, I suppose.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So I know that you said that you've appeared in one of the worst horror films. You might tell me what's that about?
Oh my gosh. Yes, I have. So this is what happened. So when you're an actor and you audition for stuff, they don't give you the full script. So you never know what you're auditioning for. And so they call sides, and it's just a couple of pages of script. And I'm reading through it and I'm like, this is really different, but I go ahead and I do the audition anyway. Well, I get cast, and then I read the whole script and it was like, oh, but then I thought to myself, I was like, there's no way anyone will ever buy this. And so like, it'll never sell. So, and what appealed to me about it was a lot of times when you do, most of the time when you do film, you don't shoot from beginning to end a script, you shoot by location. And so this was going to be filmed sequentially, is what they call it, like a play, like where you practice from beginning to end. And I thought, oh, I haven't done that in so long. That sounds fun. So I did it. There were so many times I was like, do they know there's like a Starbucks coffee on the mantle, like right behind me? And this, somebody just put, anywho, it did sell. So it sold in Europe. And I thought, oh, okay, that's fine. No one's going to know me over there. And then I found out that it's sold in the US. And the day it sold in the US, I actually cried. I was like, I don't want to be known by that. But now I just embrace it. It's so it's about killer bees, tsunami. So if you're into really bad, like really bad horror films, Tsunami, I'm recommending it. So
Oh, brilliant, brilliant. So you mentioned that you know, that you kind of take a while to build up. I think I'm kind of similar. I mean, I think I kind of, the comedy is my thing as well. But like I've seen a few of the videos that you've up, and no, I mean, you've no problem throwing yourself on the ground, and just the way that you're acting. I mean, obviously, you know what you've just told us. I mean, when you look at you, you'd say, wow, you know, that is somebody that is extremely confident and connects, and you know, you could hear the audience, you know, in tears laughing at it.
yeah. And the truth is that, you know, I'm not confident, as I mentioned, but I just kind of get in the zone. And I think the difference for me, not just with the comedy, but I do think the difference with me with speaking is the acting background and the training, because I do utilize the stage way more than a typical speaker. So, you know, because sometimes it's just hard to pay attention, especially with Zoom and so forth, but it's hard to pay attention to a speaker for 60 minutes. That's boring. And so things like movement and using different levels, whether that's emotionally or literally physically, of where you are, it just helps kind of share the message and keeps the audience engaged. So I do think that's one of the things that I really encourage speakers is get out from behind the podium, your little security blanket, and practice moving. And it doesn't mean like moving back and forth, just meandering. Move with a purpose. You know, a lot of times movement. So for an example is, you know, if you're getting to a really serious point, then just taking a few steps towards the audience and standing still and then delivering it there, it gives kind of an emotional impression as well. So your movement can kind of help with basically tell the story. But yeah, I do throw myself on this. I've done some interesting things.
And did you start with kind of like open mic and training comedy shows first before you kind of brought it into the business realm?
No, it was actually okay. So my parents were hippies here in the US, so I had no television, no pop culture. I didn't growing up. I grew up in the middle of nowhere in a forest, and which is why I'm a little off sometimes. Uh, and so what happened was I wrote this one woman show, at least that's what I thought it was. I had been writing and directing some scripts for other people, and they tend to be humorous. And so I had this idea, and it was an hour, and somebody wanted me to perform for several hundred women. And I did, not knowing anything about stand-up comedy. I didn't know that's what it was. So that's when they were like, oh, you do stand up. And I was thinking, what's stand up? I had never seen a stand up comedian. I had never listened to him. I didn't know what it was. And I was in my 30s. So I went and researched it wildly. And in the meantime, I got hired. So somebody who saw it, her dad owned this big company, and they hired me to do their holiday entertainment part, to be the holiday entertainment for their workers for their party. And that was my first paid job. And I was like, you can make money at this, because I was a starving actor. So and so I just really kind of threw myself in there and tried to learn as much as I could.
Excellent. And I see that you were on Colorado's Got Talent. So
Yes.
yeah, I wonder, is that kind of like the state of similar to America's Got Talent, and what did you do on that?
Yeah, so I did make it all the way up to the to right before you go on TV and audition with America's Got Talent. But I didn't have enough followers at the time. I didn't have enough videos and followers. So that's why I got axed. But so they would go around and audition in different places. And then they pulled everybody together for a big competition. And it was like everything from, like America's Got Talent, where it's just all kinds of different stuff. And but there was quite a few comedians, and so I beat out all the comedians, and then I was and then what was it, first runner up? I think I was first runner up for the overall. Yeah I should know that, but I don't.
Well, I have it written down, so that's why I'm saying it.
I've been first runner up for a lot of things and never like the thing. So
well, that's still a great achievement in fairness.
Yes, yeah.
So I know you do workshops as well, and one of them are like a keynote. Actually, it was the keynote, how to be happy. So you're doing that for an hour. So everybody's got their own way of structuring a kind of keynote, and I'm just wondering your way of doing it.
Yeah. So my way is definitely different and unique. I think in that I don't do like the, a lot of us are taught you do the main point and then you do the 3 things to back up the main point. I don't do that at all. I actually really think about it from the audience's perspective and taking them kind of on emotional journey. And that comes from theater. So, because when you're watching a movie or a show, they kind of take you through an emotional process to get you to always root for the character and feel good at the end, like if it's an action flick or something like that. And so I really kind of think that through from the audience perspective of, okay, they're coming into a conference, they're tired, it's early in the morning. Half of them, are late. Some of them don't want to be here. What can I do in the first 5 to 7 minutes to get them to relax and kind of get us on all the same path? And then I'll go from there and kind of do a little bit of an emotional roller coaster. And how that works for me is I give my point. Then I do comedy behind it. So it's got 7 things instead of 3. I'll do comedy with it. And then I will give the actual takeaway, like, what do you do with this? So whether that's a phrase or something you can do that's more serious. And then with my story, it's super not funny. So I tried it all over the place. Like I've tried it at the beginning and that was horrible because people hire me to be funny. And then you come out with this really dramatic story and they're like, they don't know what the audience isn't ready. They don't know what to do with it. So I found after really trying that I get to the serious part, like with my story about 2/3 of the way in, because they've laughed. We're on the same page. We have a camaraderie. Then I can dump it on them. And then I bring it back around to be more, like a inspirational, yay, like a rooting thing, like woo, cheering at the end. So that's how I structure my keynotes, is really based on the audience's emotions.
And when you're emceeing, then what is it kind of similar, or have you a different strategy for that?
Yes. So when I'm emceeing, and again, this probably comes from theater, sometimes you can just read the room of when the audience is with you and not. And so a large part of emceeing is just being prepared for things to go wrong or filler, that kind of thing, or really listening to the speakers and what's happening in the room and being able to tie that back around in a fun way. So I think being really keyed in to where the audience is, like if they're bored, if they're tired, if they're like the last speaker was not very engaging, I'm trying to keep that energy back up. And that is emotional, really. So really paying attention to where your audience is experiencing from their side. So, yeah.
I see you're a member of the Colorado chapter of National Speakers Association. So have you found that actually helps you?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. It was the smartest thing I ever did, was joining the National Speakers Association. I learned so much. just from being open-minded, and I'm an artist. I'm not a business person. And so to be able to learn from them, the business side of it is what took me from like, a free speech to making a really decent living doing what I love. And because some people are like, you sell out because you do corporate, you're not doing art. And I'm like, yeah, I am going to sell out because I don't have to work a 9 to 5. So if I need to, mix it up a little, you better believe it. I'd way rather be on a plane in front of an audience than behind a desk hanging on to my art. So, so yeah, but when I went to my very first meeting, um, I was really curious, and I learned all these terms I'd never heard before with the business side of it. And I went back the second time and I came home and I thought, you know what? I'm going to treat this like a master's program. I'm going to go all in for 2 years and learn everything I can from this organization. And apply it. And that's what I did. And I did. And so now I love to give back. So I was on the board for the Speakers Association and the Meetings Industry Council, and I'm just a huge fan.
Excellent. And I see as well on your website, you've lists of the kind of clients. So you mentioned corporate. So is it true that you'd land the big corporate clients, or have you a strategy? Because I know some people are able to kind of pull it off, and others are just kind of crying in their corner, for 5 years, and they can never get have you a strategy how you actually manage to land the big boys?
Well, so I know a lot of strategies. That doesn't mean I implement them. But I would say that, making sure you have, your assets as far as like just the website, the photo, the videos, like those kinds of things. And making sure that your talk is a decent quality, with the testimonials, and knowing that it's effective. That's important, because a lot of my stuff is word of mouth, or what you call spin-off, where I do an event and then I get booked for several others because somebody saw me speaking. So like I just booked 2 last Thursday. They both called me. They both said, hey, some of our people saw you, totally different organizations at different events. And I'm like, I don't know who the other people are. Like, I don't know who they were, but they recommended you. And I booked on the spot. And that was just word of mouth. And then, I do RFPs, the request for proposals for like conferences and so forth. But I learned that, a couple things right away, just is like, for any of you filling those requests for proposals out, is it's really not about you, it's about the attendees. So it's kind of that same mindset of when you're speaking, not making it about your message. It's about where is the audience and what do you want them to take away with, kind of that emotional journey I was talking about. The same is true for the meeting planners. And they want to know how their attendees are going to feel and what you're going to do for the organization. They don't care what your caliber that much is. And then I've sat with meeting planners, some of them high level, where they were choosing speakers. And it was so interesting because they don't even give 7 seconds probably once you start speaking before they're like, yep, nope, they can tell right away. They can tell right away. So if you have a video, make sure your first 7, 10, 15, 20, 30 seconds is really good, because they really don't watch past that. They just know. They're like, they're good, they're not good. And that's it. So, and then, I really, because of my training in acting, I really take it as an art, more of a lifestyle. So I'm always working on the craft. I'm always working on creating new bits. Just from the way, like even just the foods that I eat, the way that I take care of myself, it's the kind of that acting mindset, so that when I'm on stage, that's the final. A lot of people think, oh, if I have my outline and my talk, and then I'm going to go give it. But really your talk is like, I want to say, like if you have a cake, it's like the frosting. All the work should have been done beforehand, the just constantly working on it and training and so forth. And it takes time and a lot of courage, and you fail a lot. You do. You have to be open to failing and learning. And so having an open mindset when it comes to learning, like I did with the National Speakers Association, I came in with no ego. I was like, tell me everything. And I didn't use it all, but I used what worked for me. And I mean, it just completely changed my business. So.
Brilliant. And do you ever get feedback, or would you ask for feedback from clients, especially if you think it didn't work? Obviously if they're happy, that's great, because they might get you back for a different, part of the organization, or in a year's time or something like that. But when something, it bombed or it just didn't get it, would you ever kind of try to get feedback from them?
Yeah. So I am super sensitive. So when I get like the feedback and they give you I dread it. I dread it when they give you like all the people and the attendees feedback, because I'll have like 90, it was so great. And there'll be one, I didn't like it. And that's what I focus on. I'm like, oh my gosh, what could I have done better for that person? I have only had a couple things. One is that I always walk off stage recognizing I could have done better. So knowing what landed, what didn't land, what I forgot, what I should have done, and too much actually. So I've had to learn how to process, just like going on before, I've had to learn how to process once you walk off. That's not like hazardous to your mental health. And so I never feel like I've done I've never felt like, oh my gosh, that was perfect. I've never walked off the stage that way. So the meeting plan, so I'm usually harder on myself than the meeting planners. I've only had one person out of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of events that was not happy. But that was one of the worst events of my life. And that's when I was doing comedy. And it was the setup. Every single comedian, because it was a space, they had us outside and the audience way too far away, and the sets were too long. And she gave me a bad review, and I did not pursue work for 3 months. I was like so devastated. So I am open, but I have to be in a position, like I need to have a rapport. They either need to be better than me, or it's somebody who's hired me, for me to actually to listen, because everybody has an opinion. And if they don't do it for a living, they don't know what they're talking about. And a lot of speakers like to give other speakers advice. And I think the moment that you walk off the stage, that is not the time to do it. And if they didn't ask, you have no right to be like, hey, I have an idea for you. When you did that and you sucked, it was so boring. Why don't you just don't do that. And again, that comes, I think, too, from theater, because when you never tell other actors anything, it only comes from the director. And if you have like an idea or an issue, you go to the director and the director handles it. So you don't go to the speaker as soon as they're off.
So what I would say, not just for yourself, but for others as well, because because it's mainly Toastmasters speeches that I used to, you get your pieces of paper, and at the start I was, by non-Toastmasters abused, and and I used it as a comedy speech, actually, the thing. But it was, somebody had said it to me, because you can get knocked, or you feel like you're off your game and everything. Keep all the good ones. And when you're having that down day, that you look at that and you read that and all the beautiful comments and things that inspire you. So then you won't ever take 3 months off, because that's not good enough. You're not allowed to take 3 months off, because a lot of people, yes, they do, they get affected. They listen to the one person in the audience that's given a bad review instead of the 99, and that's, I think we're all kind of built like that. We tend to kind of go that, but what we should do is reverse it and make sure, look at the positive, because the positive always keeps us positive, and then we can spread positive news. And I think that's the way it works better. Absolutely. I love that. Keeping those. That's smart. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's different too, by the way. Like if you're going to Toastmasters, you're going there for advice. But if you go to a conference and it's a paid speaker and they walk off, you're like, hey, they don't appreciate that very much.
Yeah, I know. So you do workshops as well, yeah?
Yes. Yeah. So I have a website. It's boringtosoaringspeeches.com. And basically, I just really like helping people a couple different things. But one is adding entertainment value where, the content is really good, but it's just kind of boring. So kind of adding a little bit of, things in there that can help the audience remember and relate more, whether that's humor or the images that are being used or the way the story is being told, that kind of thing. And then I also I like helping speakers. I actually created a course because speakers asked me to with my theater background. So I do have an online course called How to Look Good and Feel Great on Video, or it's something like that. I don't know. It's about I just basically so it's just kind of a lot of the stuff I've learned from being on professional shoots and just from the acting experience side of how to be able to communicate, especially if you're doing virtual presentations. So it's things like, what do you do with your hands? Because your hands feel like lead. Once you get on camera, you're like, everything feels awkward. So it's like, how do you work through that? And what does that look like? And what looks good on camera and that so forth. And I did make a coupon code for your listeners. If anybody's, it's 150 off. And the coupon code is Roy. ROI, if anybody's interested. But you can also just reach out to me. I'm always happy to help. I love helping speakers because I feel as though I can only make an impact so far. Like I can get in front of audiences, but if I can help speakers get their message out, because all of the messages are important because they're helping people live a better life, that's like a bigger ripple. And so that's it's just a bigger impact. And that's why I really love it.
Brilliant. And just kind of finally, I know you've done radio as well. So you might, because some people want to do radio. So what have you I don't know what radio you've done, but what kind of tips and tricks have you learned while doing that?
So, yeah, well, mostly voice work for commercials or like the, stories or whatever. And it's the same. It is so much the same as acting, but making sure I rely a lot on facial expressions when I'm acting and not necessarily vocal. And so it's more expressive vocally than because they're not on radio, they're not seeing you. Like on a podcast, they're seeing you a lot of the times, but they're not. So it's just being more aware of your range and where you're going vocally to help tell the story since there's no visual. So it's like being, I don't know, the timing and a little more over dramatic vocally than you would be in real life. So that's how the commercials work. And all commercials are the same thing. They're a smile. Every product ever sold. So on radio, it's done through a smile. And if you watch any television commercials at all selling anything, they're happy because they have the product. So there's a smile. You just smile all the time.
So you do the same on stage when you get on. You just, even though you're nervous, you just
you just take it. Yep. It's called acting. No, just kidding.
Listen, Stacy, it's been wonderful speaking. So you mentioned the site before. You might just say it again. Where's the best places to get you?
Sure. boringtosoaringspeeches.com. Oh, and then I am starting my YouTube up a little bit, where I'm trying to throw some tips on my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel's all over the place, but I am trying to get it more speaker oriented. And you can just Google my name and it'll come up.
No, I can put it on the podcast because I've seen it. I have the links, so I'll put all the links in the podcast description. But listen, Stacy, thank you very much. It's been thoroughly enjoyable.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. Truly, Roy. Thank you.
Thanks. So that's all for the Speaking Podcast. You can find all our episodes on speakingpodcast.com or BitChute and YouTube at Speaking Podcast. Be sure to give us a thumbs up, 5-star rating, share with your friends. Until next week, take care.